Do you feel frustrated trying to grow your franchise? Are you having trouble balancing your consumer and franchise development marketing? Do you wish there was an easier way? Imagine if you had a proven roadmap to take your franchise's marketing from costing you to making you money. That's why we've created the Franchise Growth Blueprint. We walk you through the exact same process that we use to run franchise marketing campaigns for our clients at scale that has resulted in triple-digit growth. This blueprint isn't for anyone. It's not for people just starting a franchise. It's not for franchises without long-term goals. This is for franchises that want to scale up their marketing in a predictable and profitable way using a proven roadmap. If you want to sell more franchises, keep your current franchisees happy, and learn from people who have already done it, go to franchisegrowthblueprint.com and sign up today. That's franchisegrowthblueprint.com. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Franchise Marketing Podcast. I am very excited today because we have AJ Titus on the show, who is the president of Signarama and the president of United Franchise Group. AJ, welcome to the show.
How are you doing, Jordan?
I'm doing great. Thanks a ton for coming on. So for the very few listeners who haven't heard about you and Signarama and UFG, what are you guys all about?
So it's funny, Signarama we're a family-run business. So my dad actually started Signarama 35 years ago this year. So September we celebrate 35 years, and so it's been a really fun ride. I've been a part of the company my entire life, but Signarama specifically is the world's largest sign and graphics franchise. So we do everything from small indoor signs to large fabricated outdoor signs, vehicle graphics, everything in between. And then we're a part of United Franchise Group, which has about a dozen brands now in all different industries, and we're a global company as well.
Very cool. So, you, as you mentioned, you grew up seeing Signarama grow. So tell me, what has it been like, since a wee young lad to now running the show, if you will?
Well, it's funny because in a family-run business, and those of you listening or who might be in a family-run business, you do everything. You sweep the floors, you stuff brochures, you come in early, you stay late. And my experience is not much different than that. We did that growing up, instead of we just kind of grew a much bigger business in a lot of different ways. And we now work with other family-run businesses. And so my dad actually started the business in New York, moved the company down to South Florida, and I'm eternally grateful that he moved it to South Florida and didn't keep it in New York. And so from my birth all the way to now, I've grown up with everyone in the company. We have people who've worked with us 20, 30, 35 years in some cases. And so, this is my family, and I don't know anything honestly different or better. So that's kind of how my experience has been. Yeah.
Very cool. And I imagine over those years, you've seen the brand almost like transform. So I'd love to hear about some of the transformations that it's gone through.
Yeah, it's funny because again, I wasn't at the first store, but the first store had a plotter, a developing room for film at the time, and then a full-time painter on staff. There was no digital printer. There was no equipment like there is now. And so I remember my dad telling me stories about how he wanted to add a digital printer to the Schedule A, and it was encouraging franchise owners to buy a digital printer. And a lot of them thought he was nuts, thought it was way too expensive, crazy. It's not the way our industry's going. And the fact of the matter is he was 100% right. And now you wouldn't dream of owning a sign company without a digital printer. And so from there, we didn't wrap vehicles before. That was an evolution in our business. Flatbed printing is another thing. Digital signage, of course, is something that's been around for quite a while now, but it's getting more and more popular and more people are adding it. So it continuously ebbs and flows. And I'm excited because it's a creative industry. And so there's new equipment every day and new products to sell every day. And so I expect 3D printing to be a part of our business at some point, not now, but at some point. I totally expect more designer type signage. You're seeing a little bit of the social media influencers get involved and have neon signs, neons making a comeback in some cases, and so there's some interesting things to keep an eye on, but it constantly changes and evolves.
That's really interesting. I want to unpack this a lot more, AJ. So, how do you stay ahead of that curve with new technology, new tools coming out every day, right? Like as you mentioned, 3D printing, which is going to be a huge thing, and it has already started taking over.
Well, we have a research and development department here at the corporate office. We've actually tested three different 3D printers. Candidly, it's probably not the right time for them. They move too slow and they're a little expensive, the ones we've tested. But I fully expect there to be a time where the cost goes down and it becomes faster, openly more efficient. But again, any good franchise company, they test things twofold. They test things in house at the corporate office, and they do things in their R&D department and look at those. But they also work with their franchisees to help them test things as well. I routinely go and talk to franchise owners and ask them, what products are you seeing in the field? What type of equipment? There's been many changes that we've made at the corporate office based on owners giving us advice on that. And so that's the best way. It should be a symbiotic relationship.
Mhm. Yeah, and you know what? I hear that a lot about creating this symbiotic system. So I'd love to hear more about like what did you do to help create that, feedback loop between you and your franchisees?
It starts with being approachable. A lot of people in my industry in franchising, they're afraid to give out their cell phones. They're afraid to give out personal emails and things like that. I give any owner who wants my cell phone, my cell phone. So I get text messages, calls, Facebook messages, LinkedIn messages, all the above, because I care about the feedback. I want the feedback because again, I'm not running the business for myself. I'm running the business for everyone. I'm running the business for our franchise owners, for my kids, for my brothers, my cousins, and my family who's in the business. And so I'm just a steward. I'm not trying to run and build this business for myself. I have it for a brief period of time, and if you run the business the right way, the business should way outlive you. And so that's kind of my approach to it, and it's especially true in franchising because you're really a part of a bigger network of people.
Mhm. Yeah, and I love how accessible you've made yourself to your franchisees. I'm curious, how do you sift through the noise to really find that signal, if you will?
Well, so the more formal process is we have a franchise advisory council. So we do meetings monthly. We have an in-person meeting once a year, and I go through an agenda of things that I think is the best way to move forward. And there's times where our franchise owners would say, "Nope, that's not the best way to move forward. Don't waste your time and money." But I appreciate that because I don't want to spend the time and money if everyone's going to hate it. So it's both. It works both ways. But then on top of that, I talk to them about our resources. We cannot do everything. No company can do everything that everyone wants. And so we were going to focus on three things this year. What are those three things? And then I want them to be a part of that process. And so the team here knows that we're focused on three big projects each year. And that's what we're looking to focus on. And so we're always kind of being upfront and being clear. Saying yes to everything just makes everyone uncomfortable, and you're not going to get it done. And so why are you going to disappoint someone? And so it's laying down the clear parameters, it's doing it in a processed way, but it's also being clear that, hey, we want to make everyone happy, and three things a year is the best way to do it.
Alright. So tell me more about, these parameters that you're setting to say, okay, test in house, test with your network, and then roll out to your entire network.
Sure. So, it depends on the type of product. There might be products that have already tested, for like if it's a piece of equipment, for instance, we would want to test it internally here. And I would want a vendor to send the piece of equipment to a franchise owner because we can test kind of the book smart. I like to say kind of book smart. They can test the practicality. They're actually making signs and running the business every day. And so they're going to pick up on things that we won't pick up on and vice versa. And so that's part of the process. And so we go down that path and we ask for the feedback. And then once we get some good feedback there, then it's something that we unveil to the system and say, hey, here's a new product, here's a new service. There's some more experimental things we might take more time with. But if a big company like HP or 3M or whoever comes to us and says we want to do this, we're going to trust them a little bit more than in kind of a startup, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Mhm. Totally, totally. I love the very structured and almost and systematic process you have to R&D and innovation. This is great. So you're in a very interesting space, AJ. Signs, offline marketing. You know, Obviously the internet has had a huge impact on it, and I love that you're still focusing on offline because there's still a ton of potential in it. I'd love to hear what are your thoughts on it. How have things changed with the internet, coming into
Sure.
play? We'll get right back to the show, but do you feel frustrated trying to grow your franchise? Are you having trouble balancing your consumer and franchise development marketing? Do you wish there was an easier way? Imagine if you had a roadmap to take your franchise's marketing from costing you to making you money. That's why we've created the Franchise Growth Blueprint. To find out more, visit franchisegrowthblueprint.com. That's franchisegrowthblueprint.com. Now back to today's episode.
Well, again, this is one of those other things where we were and probably was more of a mistake than anything. We went very heavy into online stores, presence, things of that nature, and pretty early on. And so we were ahead of our time in a lot of ways. It probably wasn't the right time and the right business partner and the right thing to do at that time. But at the end of the day, we wanted to be ahead of the curve. But the internet has just helped our business. Actually, it's taken away parts of the business that were very tedious for our franchise owners. So our franchise owners, they do the best when they're dealing with small to medium to large size enterprises, businesses. That's really, we're B2B. We're not a B2C. And so when grandma comes into the store and wants a happy birthday grandson banner, and they want 50 different changes to it and they're very intricate and it's, you're going back and forth and it's not a lot of money. That takes up a lot of our owners' time, where they would be much better off if they just went to a business owner and did a plethora of different things, where vehicle graphics and your signage on the windows and do a package than just one banner. And so the internet has kind of taken that part of the business away, which is a good thing in a lot of cases. We still do banners, we still do a lot of those things. The other side of it is a lot of people realize our competitor's not online. We have such a distinct advantage over people online because we're so custom. You can't go and price match us other places. You can't go on Amazon and order a specific sign, especially an electric sign, if you're going down that path. And so we've carved out a really specific part in the market where no one can really touch us.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. And so that's a big part of the internet and things of that nature. We don't want to be the company that does everything for everybody in every part of their business. We're a sign company. We're very clear on what we do. We're a sign and graphics business, and we have a number of different products, actually a ton of different products within that industry vertical. So, we've tried to stay away from other things as well. We're focused on that.
Awesome. So I want to dive a little deeper in that. You, as you mentioned, you kind of carved out your own little area. How did you find that area? What was the process behind it?
Well, it compounds on each other, right? My dad started the first business 35 years ago. He ran the business with Jim Tatum, who was our last president before me. And he sold the signs. Jim Tatum made the signs, and they kind of built from there. But then as they sold that business and they became a franchise company, the franchisees really direct where we're going. We ebb and flow. Obviously we're not painting signs anymore. A lot of our stores don't have a painter on staff painting, going on buildings and painting things, right? So that was part of the business we thought was going to be a big deal in it, and it wasn't. And that ebbs and flows all the time. It's really where our customers come from. It's really what are they asking for? What do they want? And what is the next step? Digital signage as well. We haven't seen a decline in traditional signage with the rise of digital signs, which is great because it actually just complements each other. And I think there's also a need for both products. It's not, one doesn't replace the other, which has been again, we've seen this trend for years now. And so it's been great to see that.
Awesome. That's fantastic to hear. So AJ, one question I always like to ask our guests is, what advice would you give someone just starting out as a franchisor?
Ooh, as a franchisor, the easy answer is listen to your franchise owners, and you should, but there's a balance there, because there's also times you got to tell your franchisees if they're wrong. And there's a balance, of course, but you have to respect the fact that your franchisees are in the business and they're doing it day to day, and they've invested really their life savings into you, into what you're doing and your ideas. And so you have to respect it a little bit more, but you also have to have the ability as the leader to tell them no when they're wrong.
Mhm.
And it's one of those hard struggles each day that you have to go back and forth. But doing everything the franchisee says and doing everything the franchisor says is not a good idea. So it's not good to be on both. So listen, and again, there's a misconception with children. I don't have kids. I don't know if you have kids, Jordan, or not, but what I'm told is that kids spell love Time, time. And so franchisees see that you care with the time you put into them. And so if you don't call them and you don't reach out to them and you don't give them new things to do and you don't help and work on the system and marketing materials and all the things a franchisor is supposed to do, you're going to burn that relationship. And then it really hurts you in the long term because franchisors are in the relationship business. That's what they're in. We're a sign company, but we're really in the relationship business.
Totally. So how do you have these more difficult conversations with your franchisees?
It's always giving why. Like for instance, okay, we went through a point of sale change in our company over the last couple of years. Okay, it's clearly telling the owner why you're doing this. Okay, it's not, and just because we need to change is a terrible answer. Okay, and it's laying out clearly why we have to go about this change that's going to disrupt my business. It's essentially selling the owner on that. Sometimes it's just hey, you breached your contract. We agreed we're on the same team. You're a part of a franchise. And by being a part of a franchise, there are rules and there's things for the betterment of the whole that we have to abide by. And the fact of the matter is you're not doing that. And so we need to move forward and change that. Mm-hmm. And so it can be difficult, but again, I've had the luck of kind of growing up in the business. A lot of our owners knew me before I became president, which was cool. For a new franchisor, I know it's harder for that, but it's just doing those little things throughout the year to when you have to have a tough conversation that they remember all the little things that you've done and the positive things you've done. So you can't just go to the well one time in the year. It's never going to be a good thing.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. So this is a growth and marketing podcast. I'd love to hear what are some of the most efficient campaigns that you've ran to grow Signarama.
In what ways, Jordan? So again, there's digital and then there's physical, and like what ways?
Anyway,
okay.
Though I'm going to ask for you to answer this in two parts: one on the consumer side and one on the franchise development side.
Okay, interesting. So the one that sticks out in my mind, we actually were this past year in the pandemic, we ran a set of commercials in the US that was actually on major signs in the world that people know are major signs. And so like, for instance, the Las Vegas sign, like the welcome to Las Vegas sign. And so they explain kind of signs point you in all these different directions. You have an emotional attachment to signs. I thought that was a really great campaign. We ran during the pandemic and that was interesting. Our marketing fund actually sponsored the axe throwing contest in the US. And so the World Axe Throwing Contest, and that's been 2 years that we've done that. And that's been really fun to kind of play off of that. And we have some fun campaigns we've done with franchisees to kind of have an axe throwing contest and things like that, which is pretty fun. Those more from the franchisee side. From a franchise development side, one of the funniest things we ever ran, this was a United Franchise Group ad. It was an Entrepreneur magazine. We actually did the back cover. And it was a guy, he was sitting in his chair and he was like cheering, like he was, like in his chair. And it says, "Have you been fired?" ? And it says, "That's great news. You can now start your own business. We have many different brands to pick from." And so I just thought that was funny. I don't know what the metrics were on it. I'd have to double check, but it was probably 5 or 6 years ago we ran that. But I always chuckle when I saw that one.
I love that. I love the creativity behind that. All right. So AJ, we are nearing the end of the episode. You've dropped a ton of information. And the way that I always like to end them is with something that I call the lightning round. So it's a few fast-paced questions coming at you. Are you ready?
Great. Oh yeah, I'm ready.
All right. So first question is, what is your favorite tool or app that you cannot live without?
Ooh, tool or app. I'm into Duolingo right now, so trying to learn Spanish. So that's something I do every day. So I'll probably go with that. But from a more practical standpoint, Microsoft Outlook. I'm on Outlook every day. So
yeah, Duolingo. Awesome app.
Yeah.
Next question. What is your favorite book?
Ooh, favorite book. I love the Tim Grover book. So Tim Grover was Michael Jordan's trainer. He's actually has a new book coming out, and he has a book called Relentless. That's a wonderful book. I'm a sports junkie. I love all the different sports. I'm a big South Florida sports fan, so Relentless would probably be one of my favorites. Yeah.
Nice. I recently watched Last Dance, and
That's awesome.
amazing story.
It's a must stop. If it's on television, you have to stop. And I've seen it a million times now, so you have, but it doesn't matter.
Next question. Who is a franchise leader that you look up to?
Ooh, franchise. I mean, there's a lot. I'm a part of International Franchise Association on different boards there with them, with that Fran, and I look up to so many people. There's a ton of franchisors and leaders in the company that I look up to. I mean, oh, that's a tough question. Man, I'd probably say, but besides my dad, I'd probably cheat with that one. Besides my dad, I look up to someone like a Mary Thompson. She's the COO of Neighborly Brands. She does a great job. She's given me some great advice over the years. I mean, I could name a bunch of different people, man. There's a lot of people I work with. Yeah.
Yeah. The industry is just filled with fantastic people.
Yeah.
All right, AJ, last question, I promise.
Great.
Where can people find out more about you and your franchise?
So you can go to unitedfranchisegroup.com to see all our different brands. Signarama.com, more specifically, if you're a consumer and want to buy signs, we're all over the world as well. And then on top of that, my LinkedIn, if you want to directly look at me, AJ Titus, in West Palm Beach United Franchise Group.
Awesome. AJ, thank you so much for jumping on the podcast. Really appreciate it. You dropped a ton of knowledge that I know our listeners are going to absolutely love.
Well, I appreciate the time, Jordan. I always love sharing, and I appreciate being on.
Yeah, no problem. Bye for now.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Franchise Marketing Podcast. If you found this episode useful, share it with a friend and subscribe now so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. And until then, happy marketing.